Anna had always thought of her family as picture-perfect. Her parents, Mark and Susan, were loving, supportive, and reliable. They had raised Anna and her younger brother, Liam, in a small, cozy house in a quiet neighborhood. Every memory of her childhood was filled with warmth. Family dinners where they laughed until they couldn't breathe, holidays spent opening presents under the sparkling Christmas tree, and Saturday mornings where her mom made pancakes while her dad played old records. To Anna, her family was unshakable. Until that day in the attic. It started innocently enough. Her parents were planning to downsize, and they had asked Anna to come over and help them clear out old boxes. She was happy to assist, thinking of it as an opportunity to revisit childhood keepsakes and bond with her parents. The attic was a dusty, forgotten corner of the house, filled with faded cardboard boxes, suitcases, and plastic storage bins. As Anna pulled open one of the boxes, she felt a wave of nostalgia wash over her. Inside, she found photo albums from her early years, filled with pictures of her as a baby, toddling through the backyard or being cradled in her father's arms. She flipped through the pages, smiling at the memories frozen in time. But then, something caught her eye. It was a small, worn photo tucked loosely into the back of one album. The edges were yellowed, and it didn't seem to match the rest of the pictures. The photo showed a baby wrapped in a pale pink blanket lying in a hospital bassinet. Scrawled in neat handwriting across the bottom were the words, Anna 6/24. What struck her as odd wasn't the baby or the date. It was that her birthday was December 24th, exactly 6 months later. At first, Anna thought it might have been a simple mix-up. Perhaps the photo wasn't hers, or maybe someone had written the date incorrectly. "Mom," Anna called out, holding up the picture. Her mother appeared at the top of the attic stairs, wiping her hands on her jeans. "What is it, honey?" Anna handed her the picture. "Who's this? It says it's me, but the date doesn't make sense. My birthday's in December." Her mother's expression shifted ever so slightly, but it was enough for Anna to notice. Susan smiled quickly, almost too quickly, and said, "Oh, that must be a mistake. Someone probably wrote the wrong date on the photo. You know how things get mixed up over the years." Anna hesitated. "Are you sure? The baby looks like me, and the handwriting looks pretty deliberate." Her mother waved it off, her voice light and breezy. "I wouldn't worry about it. These old pictures can be so confusing. Let me see if I can find more from that time." She took the photo and tucked it into her back pocket, then immediately began rummaging through another box. Something about her mother's reaction didn't sit right with Anna. Susan had always been calm and composed, but her response had felt rehearsed, like she had anticipated the question. Anna's father soon joined them, and when she asked him about the photo, he gave a similarly dismissive answer. "It's just an old picture, sweetheart. Don't get too caught up in it," he said, patting her shoulder. The rest of the afternoon passed uneventfully, but Anna couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was off. Later that evening, after returning to her apartment, she pulled out her phone and searched through her own baby photos that she had digitized years ago. Sure enough, she found pictures from the same day as the mysterious photo, her in a hospital bassinet wearing the same blanket. But she tried to brush it off, telling herself it was a small inconsistency, hardly worth worrying about. But as the days went on, the memory of her parents' reactions kept replaying in her mind. She started to notice other small things she had overlooked before. How her mother always seemed to avoid detailed stories about Anna's birth. How there were fewer baby pictures of her compared to Liam. How her parents had never kept any mementos from the hospital where she was supposedly born. 2 weeks after discovering the photo, Anna decided to look at her birth certificate for the first time in years. She rummaged through her file cabinet and found it tucked between her passport and an old tax return. Holding the document under the light, she scanned it carefully. It looked legitimate enough, her name, her parents' names, her date of birth, but something caught her attention. The hospital listed as her birthplace. Anna had grown up hearing that she was born at County General, the same hospital where her brother Liam was delivered. But the certificate listed a different hospital entirely. one in a neighboring town. Her heart started to race. Why would her parents have lied about something so basic? She debated calling them right then and there, but a part of her hesitated. If they had been hiding something, she wasn't sure they would be honest with her now. The following weekend, she decided to pay a visit to the hospital listed on her birth certificate. She wasn't entirely sure what she was looking for. Maybe records, maybe someone who remembered her parents, but she needed answers. The hospital was a small, outdated facility, and the receptionist at the front desk looked confused when Anna explained why she was there. "I'm sorry, but we don't keep records that old on site," the receptionist said. "You'd have to contact the county archives for anything over 20 years. Frustrated but undeterred, Anna thanked the woman and left. On her way home, she couldn't stop thinking about how strange it all felt. Why would her parents lie about something as significant as her birth? Was it possible that the photo she had found wasn't a mistake after all? That night, she called her Aunt Karen, her mother's younger sister. Karen was known for being the family's open book, the one who often let secrets slip when she had too much wine at Thanksgiving. "Hey, Aunt Karen, can I ask you something?" Anna began cautiously. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" "I found this old photo of me as a baby, and the date on it doesn't match my birthday. And then I noticed my birth certificate lists a different hospital than the one Mom and Dad always mentioned. Do you know anything about that?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Karen finally spoke, her voice was unusually hesitant. "Oh, honey, I'm not sure it's my place to say anything. You should really talk to your parents." "Karen, please. They're not telling me the truth, and I need to know what's going on." Another pause, then Karen sighed. "Look, all I can say is that it wasn't their choice to keep you in the dark. They thought they were doing what was best for you, but if you really want answers, you'll have to get them from them." Anna's chest tightened. "What do you mean, keep me in the dark? What are you talking about?" "I've already said too much," Karen said quickly. "Just talk to your mom and dad, okay? And be patient with them. This isn't easy for anyone." Anna hung up the phone, her mind racing. Her aunt's cryptic words only deepened her suspicion that something was seriously wrong. For the first time in her life, she felt like a stranger in her own family, unsure of who she really was or where she had come from. The days following Anna's cryptic conversation with her Aunt Karen were a blur of unease and unanswered questions. She couldn't shake the feeling that her parents were hiding something important, something that could explain the inconsistencies she had uncovered. The photo, the conflicting birth certificate, and Karen's evasive responses all pointed to a deeper truth buried beneath the surface of her seemingly perfect family. Anna's mind raced with possibilities. Was she adopted? Had she been switched at birth? Every theory seemed far-fetched, yet each one gnawed at her relentlessly. Sleep became a distant memory as she pored over old family albums, scoured public records online, and replayed every interaction with her parents, searching for clues. One morning, after another sleepless night, Anna decided she couldn't live in limbo any longer. If her parents weren't going to be honest with her, she would have to find the truth herself. She resolved to visit the county archives in search of her original birth records, hoping they might shed light on the discrepancies in her story. The archives building was an imposing, nondescript structure on the edge of town, its gray facade as uninviting as the bureaucratic process Anna anticipated inside. As she approached the front desk, a middle-aged clerk glanced up from her computer with a bored expression. "Hi, I'm looking for birth records from 1997, Anna said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. The clerk raised an eyebrow. "You'll need to fill out a request form and provide some identification. Do you know the specific file you're looking for?" "Yes, it's for myself. Anna Parker, born December 24th, 1990. The clerk handed her a clipboard and gestured toward a seating area. "Fill this out and I'll check what we have in the system. It might take a while." Anna settled into a plastic chair, her hands trembling slightly as she completed the form. The minutes stretched into an hour, and her mind spiraled with worst-case scenarios. What if there was no record of her birth at all? What if her parents had fabricated everything? Finally, the clerk called her name. Anna hurried to the counter, where the woman held a manila folder. "We found your file," she said, sliding it across the desk. "You can review it here, but you're not allowed to take it out of the building. If you need copies, let me know." Anna's hands shook as she opened the folder. At first glance, the document seemed identical to the birth certificate she had at home. Her name, her parents' names, and the hospital's name were all there. But as she scanned further, her breath caught in her throat. There, in faint type at the bottom of the page, was a notation she had never seen before. "Certificate amended in 1999. "What does this mean?" Anna asked, pointing to the line. The clerk squinted at the document. "It means the original record was changed 2 years after your birth. Usually that happens when there's an adoption or a legal name change." Anna felt like the ground had been ripped out from under her. "Is there a way to see the original record?" The clerk hesitated. "You'd need to file a formal request, and it might take a few weeks to process. Adoptions, in particular, are often sealed records. You'd have to get a court order to access them." The word adoption echoed in Anna's mind like a gong. She thanked the clerk and left the archives building in a daze, clutching her bag tightly as she walked to her car. Sitting behind the wheel, she stared blankly at the dashboard, her thoughts racing. If the certificate had been amended, then it was possible, no, likely, that she wasn't her parents' biological child. Her resolve hardened. She couldn't wait weeks for a formal request to go through. She needed answers now. That afternoon, she decided to visit the hospital listed on her amended birth certificate again. Maybe someone there could help her piece together the fragments of her story. The hospital was small and unassuming, its faded brick exterior a stark contrast to the shiny modern facilities she had expected. Inside, the reception area was quiet, with only a few patients waiting to be seen. Anna approached the front desk, where a young receptionist greeted her with a polite smile. "Hi, I'm trying to get some information about a birth that took place here in 1997, Anna said, keeping her voice calm. "It's for personal reasons." The receptionist nodded. "Do you have any documentation or identifying details?" Anna handed over her ID and a copy of her birth certificate. The receptionist examined the documents before typing something into her computer. "We don't keep detailed records that far back on site," she said after a moment, "but we do have a basic registry of births. Let me check if your name is listed." Anna waited, her heart pounding in her chest. After what felt like an eternity, the receptionist frowned. "I'm not seeing an entry for Anna Parker in 1997. Are you sure this is the right hospital?" "Yes, it's on my birth certificate," Anna insisted, leaning forward. The receptionist hesitated. Sometimes, if an adoption was involved, the original record might not match the amended certificate. "Do you want me to check for any adoptions around that time?" Anna nodded quickly. "Please." The receptionist typed for several minutes before looking up with a cautious expression. "There's an entry here for a baby girl born on June 24, 1997, listed as Baby Girl Doe. The mother's name was listed as Emily Carter, but there's no father's name on record. The adoption was finalized in 1999. Anna's knees felt weak. "Emily Carter?" she whispered. The name meant nothing to her. It wasn't anyone she recognized. "Is there any more information? Anything about the adoptive parents?" The receptionist shook her head. "I'm sorry, but the rest of the file is sealed. You'd need legal authorization to access it." Anna thanked her and left the hospital, her mind spinning. Baby girl Doe, Emily Carter, adoption. The pieces were starting to fit together, but the picture they painted was one she never expected. Her parents, Mark and Susan, weren't her biological parents. They had adopted her when she was 2 years old, but for some reason, they had never told her the truth. The drive home felt like a blur. Anna's emotions swung wildly between anger, confusion, and heartbreak. Why hadn't her parents told her? Did Liam know? Had he been keeping this secret from her too? She felt like her entire life had been a lie, the foundation of her identity crumbling beneath her. That evening she sat alone in her apartment, staring at the name Emily Carter scrawled on a piece of paper. Who was this woman? What had happened to her? And why had her parents hidden her existence from Anna? As the questions swirled in her mind, Anna realized there was only one way to get the answers she desperately needed. She would have to confront her parents. This time, she wouldn't let them evade the truth. The next few days felt heavy and overwhelming for Anna. Each passing moment seemed to amplify the weight of the secret she had discovered. The life she had once known, stable, loving, and full of certainty, was now fractured. She couldn't keep pretending everything was normal, not after what she had learned. Her heart felt raw, and the questions flooded her mind like a relentless tide. By the time Friday evening rolled around, she knew she couldn't put off the inevitable conversation any longer. She had stewed in frustration, confusion, and hurt for days, and it was clear she couldn't move forward without answers. Anna needed to talk to her parents, Mark and Susan, and demand the truth. She had chosen a quiet evening for this confrontation, hoping to catch them at home without distractions. But as she pulled into their driveway, she felt a knot of anxiety tightening in her stomach. What if they didn't take it well? What if they denied everything? The house looked exactly as it always had, warm, inviting, and familiar. The lights in the windows glowed gently, casting a soft yellow hue onto the neatly trimmed lawn. Anna took a deep breath before stepping out of the car and walking up to the front door. Mark answered, his face lighting up in surprise when he saw her. "Anna, what a nice surprise. Come in, come in." He reached out and gave her a hug, but it felt distant, more formal than usual. "Hey, Dad," Anna said, forcing a small smile. "Can we talk? I need to ask you something." Mark's brow furrowed slightly, but he led her into the living room. Susan was already seated on the couch, flipping through a magazine, and she looked up as Anna walked in. The warmth in her eyes dimmed when she saw the serious expression on her daughter's face. "Is something wrong?" Susan asked, her voice cautious. "Yes," Anna said, taking a seat across from them. She clutched her hands tightly together, struggling to find the right words. "There's something I need to know. About my birth?" Mark exchanged a quick glance with Susan, and his face stiffened. "Anna, we've told you everything there is to know about your birth. You're our daughter, plain and simple." "No, you haven't," Anna interrupted, her voice firm. "You've never told me the truth. The birth certificate, the hospital, it doesn't add up, and I found a picture. A picture that says I was born 6 months before my actual birthday." Her parents' faces immediately clouded over with discomfort. Susan shifted uncomfortably, folding her arms across her chest, while Mark's expression hardened. "Anna, please," Susan began gently, but Anna cut her off before she could continue. Please don't lie to me," Anna said, her voice breaking slightly. "Why did you lie about my birth? Why do I have a different hospital listed on my birth certificate? Why does it say I was amended 2 years later?" There was a long silence. Neither Mark nor Susan spoke. The air between them grew heavy, thick with unspoken words. Finally, Mark cleared his throat and looked down, his face weighted with guilt. "We didn't mean to keep anything from you," he said softly. "It wasn't something we planned. We did what we thought was best at the time." Susan finally spoke, her voice shaking slightly. "Anna, when we adopted you, when you were placed in our care, it wasn't an easy decision. We didn't have all the answers. But we loved you from the moment we saw you. We've always been your parents in our hearts." Anna couldn't hold back her frustration. "So you did adopt me. I'm not really yours. Biologically, I mean." Mark sighed deeply, and Susan lowered her eyes. "Yes, it's true," Mark admitted reluctantly. You were placed with us at 2 years old. Your birth mother couldn't care for you. She had complications. It was a difficult situation, but we wanted to give you a home. So why didn't you ever tell me?" Anna's voice was tight with anger and sadness. "Why did you hide this from me all these years?" "We didn't want to hurt you," Susan answered, shaking her head slowly. "We thought we were protecting you by keeping it a secret. We didn't want you to feel different or less loved. We hoped you'd never need to know." "You thought this was protecting me?" Anna's eyes burned with disbelief. "By lying to me? By erasing the truth about where I come from?" Her father looked away, his gaze falling on the floor. "We didn't know how to tell you. We didn't want to upset the balance of our family. We were afraid you'd feel rejected." Anna swallowed hard. "Rejected? How could I possibly feel more rejected than finding out my whole life has been a lie?" Silence fell between them again. The room seemed to close in around Anna. The revelation she had discovered, the truth she had unearthed, had been like a hammer to the chest. Her entire identity felt like it had been ripped away, and she wasn't sure how to piece it back together. "I need to know about my biological mother," Anna finally said, breaking the silence. "What's her name? What happened to her?" Mark and Susan exchanged a glance, and this time Susan spoke. Her voice was soft, but laced with sadness. "Her name was Emily Carter. She was a good woman from a nice family, but she wasn't in a position to care for you. She had a difficult time. Her health wasn't good. She made the hardest decision of her life when she chose to place you with us." Anna's breath hitched at the name. Emily Carter. It felt like a distant echo, someone she didn't know but who had somehow shaped her existence. "What happened to her?" Anna asked, her voice trembling. "She passed away in a car accident," Susan said quietly. "Just months after you were placed with us. It was a tragedy." Anna leaned back against the couch, feeling the weight of the news crash over her. Emily Carter had been gone for nearly 24 years, leaving behind a trail of questions and pain that she would never have answers to. But more than anything, she felt an ache. An ache for someone she had never known, but who had been a part of her life all along. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Anna whispered again. "Why didn't you ever let me know anything about her?" Mark looked pained. "We didn't want to stir up feelings in you, confuse you. We wanted to protect you from unnecessary pain. We thought you'd be better off growing up without thinking about it." "But I have the right to know." Anna's voice rose, desperation slipping into her tone. "I have the right to know where I come from, who she was, what I've been missing all these years." Mark rubbed his temples, clearly feeling torn. "We thought it was for the best. It's not that we didn't love you, it's that we wanted to shield you from more sorrow." Anna felt her chest tighten. "Shield me? By lying to me? By keeping me in the dark about my own history?" There was a long, strained silence before Susan finally spoke again. "We thought we were doing what was best for you. We wanted you to feel secure, to feel safe. And in the end, we hoped you'd never need to know." "But I do need to know," Anna said, her voice shaking. "I need to know who I am." Mark finally met her eyes, his expression full of regret. "We didn't know how to tell you. We didn't know if you'd ever understand." Anna stood up abruptly, pacing the room as her mind raced. "You had no right to decide that for me. You had no right to take away my past, my truth," she said. Susan sighed deeply, tears welling in her eyes. "We were trying to protect you. We thought it was the only way to keep you safe from the pain. But we were wrong. We were so wrong." Anna's hands trembled at her sides. "Now what? Now that I know the truth, what happens next? Where do I go from here?" Susan reached out toward her, but Anna backed away instinctively, recoiling from the pity in her eyes. "I need time to figure this out," Anna said coldly. "I need time to think." Without waiting for a response, she grabbed her coat and turned for the door. Her parents' voices followed her as she left, pleas for her to stay, for her to understand, but she couldn't bring herself to hear them. The words she had just learned hung heavily in the air. "You're not ours biologically. You were adopted." And with every step away from the house, Anna felt a deep sense of loss. Her family had loved her, but she had been kept in the dark, denied the truth, the identity that had always belonged to her. The walls she had built around her life had crumbled, and now she had to find a way to rebuild herself from the fragments left behind. For days following the confrontation with her parents, Anna felt adrift. Her mind spun with questions, but her heart was weighed down by the betrayal she felt, the deep sense of loss and the confusion over her identity. The woman she had always thought of as her mother and father had kept a crucial part of her history hidden from her, and no amount of pleading had made them see how deeply they had hurt her. She felt as if the rug had been pulled out from under her, leaving her to grapple with a future she no longer recognized. Overwhelmed and struggling to process her emotions, she found herself retreating from everyone, her friends, her work, even her own life. The relationships that once grounded her now seemed fragile, as if they were all built on a foundation of false truths. Anna felt a deep ache in her chest, a yearning to find something, anything, that could provide clarity, to reconnect with the pieces of herself that had been lost. One evening, as she sat alone in her apartment, a sudden thought struck her. Maybe the answers she was looking for weren't in the people she had always trusted. Maybe she needed to dig deeper, beyond the comfort of what she knew. It was a long shot, but she remembered something from one of the birth documents, the name Emily Carter, the woman whose child she had once been. Taking a deep breath, Anna grabbed her laptop and began her search. She started by looking for any mention of Emily Carter online, anything that could provide a lead, but after hours of fruitless browsing through countless databases and public records, she found only vague references: an obituary from 2 decades ago, a mention in an old town hall bulletin about a missing person, and a few blurry online newspaper clippings about an accident that had claimed the life of a young woman. There was no concrete connection, just fragmented clues that danced just beyond her reach. Desperate for direction, Anna remembered something Karen, her aunt, had mentioned, a memory from long ago. It was a chance, one she hadn't considered until now. Karen had been close to Emily once, back when they both lived in the same small town. Karen had always been like a distant figure to Anna, someone from a part of her past she didn't know much about. But if there was anyone who might know more, it was her. Late that night, Anna dialed her aunt's number. The phone rang 3 times before Karen answered, her voice warm but cautious. "Anna, what's wrong? You sound different." "I found something," Anna said quietly. "Something about Emily. Do you remember her?" There was a long pause. Karen sighed heavily. "Oh, honey, I knew this day would come. I've been waiting for you to ask, waiting for you to want to know the truth." "You knew?" Anna's voice rose slightly, and a sharp edge of frustration crept into her tone. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let my parents keep this from me?" Karen's voice softened. "I tried to protect you, Anna. I didn't want to interfere, didn't want to make things harder for you. But you have the right to know. You have the right to understand where you come from." Anna took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I need to know everything. I need to know who Emily Carter was, who she is. I found her name, but there's nothing about her, nothing about why she disappeared. I feel like I'm floating in the dark, with no anchor." Karen paused, as if carefully weighing her words. Emily was a kind soul. She was smart, creative, full of life. She had so much potential. But life dealt her a harsh hand. She grew up in that small town with limited opportunities, and things spiraled out of control. When she found out she was pregnant, it was devastating for her. So unexpected. "Pregnant?" Anna's breath caught. "Was I her child?" Karen hesitated. "Yes, Anna, you were her child. But she struggled. She had no real support, and she wasn't in a place to care for you. She didn't have the resources. Anna's heart pounded. What happened to her? Where is she now? Karen's voice trembled. Emily. She passed away, a car accident, a few months after you were born. It was a terrible loss. She didn't get a chance to raise you, to tell you about who you are. Her family tried to step in, but they didn't have the means either. Anna's mind reeled. She tried to imagine a life, her life, without a mother, someone who had wanted her but hadn't been able to keep her. The thought pierced her heart like a sharp blade. Why didn't anyone ever tell me? Anna whispered, barely able to speak. Why did my parents hide this from me? Karen sighed. Because it wasn't just about protecting you. It was about protecting themselves, too. They couldn't bear the pain of losing you, of losing the connection to Emily. Mark and Susan, they've always been kind, but they were overwhelmed. They did what they thought was best. They raised you as their own, but they never found a way to tell you the truth. They thought it would be easier, safer, to keep the past buried. Anna sat silently for a moment, her mind reeling. But now I have to find her family. I have to know where I came from, who I belong to. Karen, do you know anything about Emily's family? Anyone who might know more about her? Karen took a deep breath. There were a few distant relatives, an aunt and some cousins. They still live in that small town where Emily grew up. I can reach out to them. I can help you make that connection if you want. Yes, Anna said immediately. Please, help me. I need to know who she was. I need to know if there's anyone left from her family. I can't do this alone. Over the next few days, Karen contacted the remaining family members of Emily Carter. Through careful inquiries and conversations, she managed to track down one of Emily's aunts, an elderly woman named Grace, who still lived in the same town where Emily had grown up. Grace had been a close friend of Emily, and she was willing to talk, willing to help Anna piece together her family's history. A meeting was arranged. The following Saturday, Anna drove to that small town, a place she had never been to before. It was quiet, idyllic even, but something about it felt strangely familiar. She parked her car outside a quaint little house, surrounded by blooming flowers and a white picket fence. When Grace opened the door and welcomed her inside, Anna felt her breath catch. This was someone who had known her mother, someone who could fill in the gaps, the missing pieces of her story. Grace was kind but direct, eager to share memories of Emily, even though the years had been difficult. She had kept photos, old letters, and even a worn locket that once belonged to Emily. Together they sifted through these remnants of the past, and slowly Anna began to see the woman her mother had been. A woman who had loved, who had dreams and aspirations, but had been dealt a tragic hand. A woman who had shaped Anna's life, even though they had never met. She wanted more for you, Grace told her softly. Emily always dreamed of giving you a life, giving you opportunities she didn't have. She loved you, even before she could hold you in her arms. Anna listened, her eyes brimming with tears. It was overwhelming, hearing these stories, seeing the pieces of a life she had never known. And yet, it felt like she was finally beginning to understand. Her mother had tried to protect her, even though she couldn't be there to raise her. Her mother had given her up out of love, not out of rejection. I wish I could have known her, Anna whispered, holding the locket tightly in her hands. I feel like I've been missing her all this time. Grace reached out, placing a comforting hand on Anna's shoulder. You haven't missed her. She's always been with you, inside of you. You carry her spirit, her strength. It's in the way you look, in your kindness. Over the next few hours, Grace shared everything she could. The stories of Emily's childhood, the places she loved, and the people she had touched. Anna soaked it all in, feeling more connected to her mother than ever before. Slowly, a deep sense of healing began to take root inside her, a realization that even though her life had been shaped by love, it was also shaped by love. That night, as Anna drove back to her apartment, the weight she had carried began to lift, even if just slightly. She knew now where she had come from. She knew the truth of who she was. The mystery wasn't solved entirely, but it had been laid bare. Her mother hadn't abandoned her. She had given her life in the only way she could, out of love and hope for a better future. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would still be questions to answer, people to reach out to, and more pieces to uncover. But for the first time in days, Anna felt a flicker of peace. She had found something deeper than answers. She had found the strength to reclaim her story, to piece together the legacy her mother had left behind. And as she looked into her future, she knew she was ready to embrace it, not with bitterness, but with hope.